I had more people crying at the end of that, but my brother said he'd never cried reading a book in his life. He cried. I cried writing it. I had most of these 73 people, all of them probably wrote me and goes, oh my gosh, you had me going there. And then now at the end, that was just so perfect. I cried. But it's because I listened. And some writers say, oh, it's your book. You're the artist. Do what you want to do. Hey, if you're just writing for yourself, write a diary and put it under your mattress at night. If you want people to read your books, you have to think about them.
Welcome to the Author Like a Boss podcast, the podcast for indie authors who want to improve their writing, up-level their marketing, make money with their books, and have fun doing it. Now, onto the show with your host, Ella Barnard.
Hey bosses, one quick thing. You may have noticed the number one strategy to being a successful author is writing good books fast, like super fast. With that in mind, I designed the Done in 3 Months coaching and accountability program so that you can have your book done in 3 months. To find out more about how this strategy works and the Done in 3 Months program, come to the Author Like a Boss free info session. To attend the session, all you have to do is go to authorlikeaboss.com/done-in-3, the number 3, and sign up. That's authorlikeaboss.com/done-in-3, number 3. I hope to see you at the free info session. We are going to hang out, learn stuff, and have a lot of fun. And now, on to the show. Hello, Jonathan, and welcome to the show. We are so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so let me ask you, just straight up, tell me a little bit about where you started and how you got here, and basically what has your author journey been?
Well, it's been kind of convoluted. I published my first work in an academic magazine back in 1978. 77, 78, short story. And then as I entered my Marine Corps career, most of my writing was all nonfiction, political science, military arts, nuclear proliferation, things like that. My first book was on the tuna industry, believe it or not, and environmental activism. And then in 2006, I was in Iraq and can't do a whole lot there. You can't go out running and stuff like that, or else they'll take pot shots at you. And so I kind of decided, well, I really need to write a novel. And they said, write what you know. So I wrote a book about the Marine Corps, about an embassy takeover in India. Had no intention of doing anything with it. It was just something to do. And so then when I got back a couple of years later, I decided, something, I want some copies to give to my family. So I went to I know everyone's going to go ooh and ah, but I went to iUniverse, paid $470, got my 20 copies, and I was happy. I gave them out. I said, this is cool. I've got a book on a fiction book on my shelf. Jump up to 2012, and I'm at the LAX United Airlines lounge, getting ready to go overseas. And I saw a guy with a Kindle. And I thought that was pretty cool. Hey, and I told him, hey, I have a book on Kindle. And he looked me up and said, no, you don't. And so when I got back, I called iUniverse and I asked them why. They said, oh, you have to pay another $90 for that. This is 2012. Now I know a little bit more. I've heard about self-publishing. So I decided, oh, what the heck? I'll just put it up myself. I didn't want to pay the $90. And the first month I sold 400 copies. Next month, 700 copies. Now we're talking 99 cents. So, I didn't break the bank. But at that point, I kind of thought, oh, maybe I can do this. And so people contacted me and said, when's the sequel coming out? Well, I'd killed off half the people. So it was a little difficult, but I managed it. And so I published a couple books in military fiction, a couple books in military paranormal. And I was doing okay. I was happy. And then in 2015, I think it was, 2014, I did my first military science fiction. and that one kind of took off. And ever since then, I've been selling. I've written more books, a lot of readers. It's been good. I joined SIFWA because of that, based on that book, the Science Fiction Fantasy Writers of America. I've just been having a lot of fun.
What's the name of that book?
Recruit
by Jonathan Brazee, you guys. That's the one that took off. What was it that people liked about that book? Why do you think that one took off?
Realism.
Can you go into that a little bit more for people who aren't as...
I think what a lot of people, particularly people who were in the military, read it and said, oh, this is true. I mean, it's 800 years in the future, but this is true. I knew that sergeant. I knew that lieutenant. I mean, oh yeah, we did that too. And everybody wrote, I mean, the reviews were, I had some issues with editing, which I still do. But the positive reviews were like, this guy really knows what he's talking about. He's been there. He's done it. This was so real. This is believable. I think that and a very close attention to detail to make sure everything was right. I remember the book I wrote, the first book I wrote, sitting there, timing how fast a C-17 could fly from Washington, D.C. to the Philippines, and then making a chart on what all the people who were at the embassy, what they were doing in that amount of time. So none of this stuff comes out, in the book itself. It's just people can't point to it and say, oh, wait a minute, that would never happen.
So there's a lot of detail on the back end that you've done, even though it might not show up in the book, but it shows up in the timeline, even though people don't, you're not like, and it took 8 hours to go from.
Yeah. And before I did my landscaping, I live in North Las Vegas now, and my yard is just sand. It's different now. We did the landscaping. But I used to go out and build battles, the battlefields, and make sure all the moving parts were correct, and that artillery that had this amount of range could actually support them here. If they were in combat, combat armor, I knew how fast in my universe they could move. So I just try to make sure everything works correctly. I was a big time reviewer before I started writing, with a couple thousand reviews, I guess. I was one of the top reviewers from Amazon. And it used to kill me when people would make stupid mistakes. If it has to do with weapons, if it has to do with the little diner next door to the Bellagio resort in Las Vegas. There is no little diner. Anybody who's been on the Strip, which is only 19 million people a year, knows there's not a little diner. And there's no reason for that. We've got Google Maps.
Yeah.
You want to be by the Bellagio? Do Google Maps and look around.
Yeah. Anything that takes your reader out of the story is not good.
I was reading a James Patterson book, and the guy gets out of the airport at LAX, and 45 minutes later, he's in Barstow. Which
How far is that?
During rush hour.
I can't imagine you'd get anywhere. I can't imagine you'd get 2 miles away from LAX in rush hour.
You can't get downtown. I mean, literally, if you left at 1 o'clock in the morning, it'd be about 2 hours. During rush hour, 5 hours.
Yeah.
And this is James Patterson, and he has got 9 million people working on his books.
But they all live in New York. I have a couple of questions. So one is that realism. Do you think it helps? Because you're writing military sci-fi. You think that your audience is mostly a military or former military, ex-military, or whatever. Is that and do you think, is that true? And do you think that they can relate somehow? Like, what do you think it is that appeals?
50%. I think 50%. I'm pulling that out of the air.
Yeah.
I think 50% of my readers are military.
Okay.
The rest either read a lot of military or get pulled in for some reason. My novelette that was as a finalist for the Nebula Award, I had a lot of people write to me and say they know nothing about the military, but it was a good story. And so that's why they voted for me for the Nebula. But I think half of the people were in the military, and I have a high percentage of female military readers who write me all the time or meet me at conventions thanking me for writing a real book about a woman in the Marine Corps, or Fire Ants, my latest novella. She's in the Navy. They like the fact that when you have a male Marine in full armor, that the female Marine next to him is not in stilettos and a thong.
Yes. That's always been my thing about sci-fi. And I haven't read sci-fi in a while, and other, I've mentioned this in other interviews, but I'm like, I don't, and I am not military, but I really want to look up to the women that I'm reading. Like, I want to be like, oh yeah, that's who I want to be like. Like, I want to be able to put myself in those shoes and be like, yeah, I like these shoes, not stilettos.
Not stilettos. I think my the two most popular characters that I have, they're both female. I didn't plan it that way. I mean, that's just, I write about people. But definitely, in fact, and I owe my Nebula nomination to one of them, because I had people saying, hey, I want more stories on Gracie. I need more stories on Gracie. So I wrote a couple of novelettes, and one of them was published in an anthology, and that got the nomination. I never would have done that unless I had one of my readers who really liked her and wanted to know more about her or read more about her.
Wow. How was it? This is just one of my questions. How was it getting the Nebula nomination?
I was at a convention in Chicago, and I knew before you get your Nebulas, there's a Nebula reading list, and people give it thumbs up if they like it and agree with it. And I had a fair number of thumbs up, not the most by any stretch of imagination, but I was hoping against hope. I didn't think it would happen, but I was hoping against hope it would happen. And the nominations ended on a Thursday or Friday, maybe it was a Friday, and I was at the Nebulas, and they were going to announce not the Nebula, the conference in Chicago, and they were going to announce in 5 days or a week or something. And a guy named Steve Silver, who's he does a lot of stuff for SIFWA. He was there, and I was looking for him all day, but not wanting to see him. And he looks at me and he goes,
"Oh no!"
He's like, "Oh well, no problem. I mean, I didn't expect it anyway." And he goes, "I just want to tell you, and it's a secret. I want to tell you, you're a finalist." And I was like, I was so, and then I had a panel 15 minutes later, and in the panel, people were talking about awards, and someone mentioned the fact that indies don't get awards. I'm like,
I can't tell you, but
the only person that knew was a friend of mine who knew that Steve was there. And I walked in there, and she said, I saw Steve. Did you make it? And I said,
I cannot confirm.
And she goes, are you smiling? And I went, so she is the only person. I was very, very good.
She knew, but you didn't say anything. It's because she was already your friend. She could read your facial expression and the little grin on your face.
There was no way I could have been an Oscar-worthy actor, and there's no way I could have kept the smile off my face.
No way! Oh my gosh! That's so exciting. How do you get nominated to be a Nebula?
People reading it and voted for or nominated. You can nominate 5 works of any, short story, novelette, novella,
Okay.
novel, and enough
Just
people
people?
read it. No, you have to be for the Nebulas. It's SIFWA members.
Okay.
For the Hugos, it are people who went to the last Hugos who are going to this one or who already have a ticket. In fact, Hugo, here's my Dublin shirt, Worldcon.
Nice. Yeah.
So that's what's required. You have to be a member of one of the World Cons. For Dragon Awards, anybody can. You just go online and vote.
So the bigger your audience, you can invite your audience to vote for you. And
sure.
Okay.
Richard Fox got a Dragon Award last year for his Iron Dragoons, which may have been the first major award that an indie has won. And he was up against Eric Flint and some other people like that, big name traditional writers, and he pulled down the Dragon Award.
Wow. That's really important to know, because I think a lot of people who are interested in the awards, like you say, this indie versus traditional thing, and they're like, yeah, but you can't get those awards. Well, you can. Richard did it, and the Dragon Award. I mean, if you look at something, you look at 20 books at 50K. Mm-hmm.
There's 22,000 members. If 22,000 people wanted to nominate a piece of work for a Dragon Award, it's going to make the nominations.
Yeah.
Now, the Dragon Awards is really, really big, and they have an awful lot of people to go, so that's not going to get you an award.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I think it might be able to get you as a finalist at least.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter if you like indie work. Well, I don't want to put it indie. If you like any work, nominate it. Yeah.
May the best story win. Period.
Absolutely. I mean, I nominated for Hugo's. I nominated not just indie work. I did trad work, but I also nominated a small publishing press because I love the story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very small press. The book had a small run, but I thought it was just really clever, and I really liked it.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. There's a couple things, and I want to touch back on, but I really like, and actually this is all kind of in one thing, where you give back. So in terms of author reviewing, thousands of reviews, and nominating other authors based on the story, but just like, hey, we're in the community, we're helping each other. Do you think, first I want to find out, do you think reviewing so many books contributed to your ability to write better stories?
Yes.
And
well,
how?
I don't know if it's I think, let me rephrase that.
I don't know how to ask that exactly, but do you know what I mean?
Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
First of all, I don't review so many books now,
Mm-hmm.
because if the book is not good, as a writer, I am not going to leave a bad review because it's conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And I have read some bad books even lately. I'm not going to do it. If I think the book is worth, let's say, 5 stars, to use Amazon's, I don't mind putting a review on that. I know even with Amazon, you're not supposed to do that, but I don't think it's hurting anybody because I'm giving it, the best review I can. But reading a lot and then reviewing them makes me think, why is that book good? Why is it, in my opinion, why is it bad, in my opinion? And when you think of a book like that, I think that does help make you a better writer. And sometimes I read something and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. I wish I had those wordsmithing skills. I read so much really good writing,
Mm-hmm.
and I still get joy in it. And a lot of times I'm looking at it, I'm going, geez, that is such a beautiful turn of phrase, or whatever it is.
And did you know, like, after you reviewed all those books, one, just to clarify, you were reviewing a lot of books in the genre that you're currently writing in. Just to okay.
Cross. I read different genres, but a good portion.
And then I imagine it would make it really easy to know exactly what you liked in a book, what you didn't like. And then when you're sitting down to write your own, you can be like, I want to include something like this because this is what I really love in these books, even if it's not specific to a specific book. You're nodding.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I do that. And it's not just in books, though. Mm-hmm. I also get it watching TV. Those are more. That's a little different. In the books, it's how you're writing it. When I retired from the military, I took a job in Thailand for a factory, and TV is very limited. They'd only allow a little bit of TV in, and it's always, except for the Kardashians, which might be on 3 channels at the same time. It's a Discovery Channel, History Channel, things like that. Mm-hmm. And I would watch something on the History Channel, and I'd say, "Man, that is an amazing story. That's going in my book." Mm. Or I watched something on Discovery Channel. I saw this thing about there's this virus that gets into the brain of mice that makes them unafraid of cats. So the cats catch them, eat them, and this virus can only reproduce, or not a virus, it's a parasite, can only reproduce in the digestive system of a cat, and that's the cycle. And I'm just like, how in the heck did that evolve? And that came into one of my books.
Well, yeah. Oh my gosh.
As a scientific factor in my universe.
And somebody would read that and be like, this isn't realistic. And you're like, it is realistic. It's a true thing. True thing. Wow.
I do that all the time. I saw or read a story about a Medal of Honor winner on Iwo Jima who basically took a machine gun off of an airplane that had been shot down. And he uses it to clear all these pillboxes, runs back and forth, saves a lot of lives. And he ended up being killed 3 days later, but he was awarded the Medal of Honor. And I said, that has to go in my book. And I actually used it with my protagonist, who is a history buff, telling the story to the other Marines of the future.
Oh, so it wasn't like you took it and made a similar story. You actually told the story.
The story. I mean, the reason he did it, because they had taken a gun off of a future Amtrak, we say. It's a armored personnel carrier. And the lieutenant colonel, he's a lieutenant colonel by this chance, and he goes, that happened before. And basically told the story.
Wow. And did you get any feedback from that?
Yeah, I get a lot of feedback from this type of thing. I had the most feedback I got was referencing the only Coast Guard man to be awarded the Medal of Honor, a guy named Monroe. And I told his story. I had a lot of Coasties email me and saying, thank you.
Oh my gosh.
They just were, because everybody forgets the Coast Guard.
Yeah,
in science fiction, at least.
It's true. No, you don't hear a whole lot of sci-fi, Coast Guard sci-fi.
But I was amazed at how many Coastie readers I had.
Yeah.
Because I got so many emails thanking me for reminding everybody about Monroe.
Are you doing that on purpose? Are you putting those things in on purpose now, or are you just doing them still? Did they start out for fun, or?
That's my style. I'm a history buff. I love doing that stuff.
Okay.
I believe it gives. I don't think I'm a particularly skilled wordsmith. I'm not flowery. I don't have the quick turn of phrases, but I could tell a good story, and I try to keep it accurate. And I believe in verisimilitude. And these little things that you can pull in lend credence to your story. And I just think I think that's one way that I can bring readers in, since I do not have the poetic turn of phrase. to just make them fall in love with the words. I got to bring them into the story in different ways.
I find that really inspiring because I just personally, I've always kind of wanted to be a writer. I haven't, I have ideas in my head, but not a ton. I'm not like a creative, what I would say creative, artsy type of person. And so I remember when I first read my first Lee Child book, because I was exploring out, and I was like, oh, you don't have to be flowery to be successful.
That's true.
Like, you could write a good story and it doesn't have to be artsy, flowery, but you could still have really awesome characters, a really good story, really. So I find that very inspiring. And your audience, they've never said anything, have they? I mean, do they say anything like, oh, could have been more artsy? No.
There's this one guy, I'm not going to say his name, and all my friends have had reviews by this guy. Richard Fox, Michael Anderle, Michael Cooper, Craig Martell. I mean, all these guys have had reviews from this guy, and he is in love with his reviews. He gave The Martian 1 star with, 1,000-word review on why it's only worth 1 star. The first time I really noticed him was after he wrote 8 reviews on my books, on my UFMC series, and on the final book he went, thank God it's over. I couldn't stand reading even one more word, and I'm like, why did you read him then? 8. And he keeps doing this. Now I keep getting 2. No, he gave me a 3-star. I take it back. But he gives me all these 2-star reviews telling me don't quit my day job. Heinlein and Scalzi did better boot camps than me, who both won Hugos for their books.
I'm like,
okay. But he doesn't like my books, but he keeps buying them and reading them. And I could tell that he really read it.
Mm-hmm.
He's not just someone, I'm going to make a review on this one.
Yeah. How do you, a lot of the people who are listening to this or going to listen to this are going to be newer authors. So how do you respond, or what kind of advice do you have to give them for those kind of reviews?
Read the 1-star reviews for Harry Potter. Read the 1-star reviews for The Martian. For that matter, read the 1-star reviews on 50 Shades and think, would you take the $5 million you made in the first year along with the 1-star reviews? If you say yes, then don't let the reviews get you down. I read every review. I'm different. Everyone says don't read the reviews. I read every single review. And if they're negative reviews, I want to know why. Some of them I could tell what they're thinking. I'm going, okay, I may not agree, or I may agree, or a good point, or whatever. Others, you just have to laugh. I have my one non-military paranormal is a coming of age of a shapeshifter who's not a very exciting. He's a weir rat. When everyone else are werewolves and tigers and
bears and
whatever. And this guy wrote, he goes, this isn't scary. I mean, and not a weir rat, a weir rat.
Oh, so he doesn't turn into like
he's the size of a rat.
Rodents of unusual size. He turns into
no, he's not a rodent of unusual size. Great movie. But the guy writes a review saying, this isn't scary. The hero was afraid of a cat. And then he says, and anyway, what's so scary about werewolves? Because they're just nothing more than coyotes, and I shoot coyotes. When you get that review,
you can't take it very seriously.
You laugh.
You can't take it very seriously because wolves and coyotes are not at all the same.
And that's the one you save. So when you're meeting your friends, when you get to know other writers, and you're meeting someday, and you're after dinner, you're over at the bar or whatever, that's the one you pull out. As wait, you got to hear this one, because everybody's got them. Treasure that review. Put that in your pocket and hope that it beats the next person's. bad review.
I think getting your bad reviews, the worst reviews, actually is like you're a real author now when you start getting 1, 2, 3-star reviews from people you don't know. Like when you have all these 5-star reviews from people that you know, that's a good step to be out there. But when you start getting reviews from people you don't know, whatever the stars, and yeah,
I think when I first started getting reviews, I was just shocked that somebody's actually reading my work. It's just like, you don't know me, you read this, and then the first time they contact you. One of my biggest moments. I've had a couple big moments, like Jerry Purnell told me, one day, he goes, Colonel, I read your Recruit. It wasn't a half bad book. And I was like, whoa. But my first convention, I went to a convention back in 1975. My brother took me to one in Des Moines where I met Gordon Dixon, and that was cool. But I never went to another convention until after I joined SIFWA, and I went to Spokane to Worldcon. And this was when I had a guy who told me, a reviewer on Recruit. It's the first review there. If you go look at it, basically he said I was a misogynist and stuff that is not true for anybody that knows me.
Mm-hmm.
And he writes a bunch of reviews very quickly. But I was sitting on the SIFWA booth, and they said, bring some books out if you have them. So I put a couple of my books out, and this young lady walks by, and she looks over, looks down at the book, looks up at me, sees my name tag, looks down at the book, looks up at me, and the first thing she says, that review is crazy. I go, excuse me? The review that said you never get a date or what, I forget the exact words of it. Mm-hmm. That's not true at all. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this person who I never met before read my book, recognized me, read that review, disagreed with it, and the fact that the guy was accusing me of misogyny or whatever, the fact that she was female made an impact. I asked her, I said, did you read the second book? And she goes, no, not yet. You have another one? And I said, here you go. I signed it and just gave it to her.
That is awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. Like, that's amazing. There's a lot of amazing things about that story. I love that, you're getting recognized. You're like, oh, I know your name. Oh, you're that guy. That's so cool.
When it happens to you, you just can't believe it. And although I should say something else that's pertinent. I like character arcs. And when I have a series, that arc is longer and takes longer to develop. But you've got to start at a lower level. And so when in Recruit, even though he's a Marine for the Federation is not necessarily a warm and fuzzy organization. And there's a reason for that, because it gives room for change. So this guy wrote, and when you start off in Recruit, there's only men in the Marine Corps. Mm. Well, because of that, he thought I was a misogynist or whatever. Mm-hmm. I had my werewolf of Marines. The guy before he's bit by an Iraqi werewolf, he's not a very positive character. He's kind of a jerk. And I had a review that said, I was just wishing the werewolf would kill him. I quit after 3 chapters. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I honestly see his point. He probably deserved to be killed by a werewolf. But I don't want this paragon of virtue in the first, because then where does he go? Yeah. So I think sometimes you have to be a little bit careful on how negative you make a character in the beginning, because of that. I've had that on several first volumes of series where people just don't relate to the character. One of the twin sister, I had twins from my first MC from Rick Lysander, and the female twin is a little driven and thinking more of her career in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Of course, things shift. But some people mention the fact that they just didn't like her, as a person.
Yeah. It's interesting, and we're not going to go down this beyond my comment of how our cultural norms, you're going to see those in the reviews of people.
Yes.
Our cultural beliefs and like the way that our culture thinks about things, you're going to see in the reviews. I bet you it's different from the people who are in the military, from the people who are civilians, from the people who are in certain parts of the country. You're like, I can kind of tell where you're from. I bet you.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a few times conventions, and so I want to ask a little bit about why do you go to the conventions and what's the benefit that you get?
Good for my soul. Good for my soul. When I went to the first convention, forget the convention I went to as a kid.
Yeah.
That one was just cool. Plus a little local convention. But I went to WorldCon in Spokane. I walked into the Sifwa suite feeling like an imposter. Cat Rambo came over and gave me a big old hug. I sat down. A guy named Alex Schwartzman started talking to me, and he found out that I like reading Mike Resnick. And he goes, "Are you going to Resnick's party tonight?" I said, "Well, I wasn't invited." He goes, "Oh, you are now." And he drags me to that. And it was just so welcoming to meet other writers. I had that one thing with the one fan, but as I became more well-known and I started going to more conventions and being on panels, meeting my readers is tremendous. Talking with other writers. In Helsinki, I was in the green room with George Martin.
Wow.
And 3 other people. One of them, he has a handler, and 2 other people. And so it's just, just the 5 of us talking about writing, And he was getting ready to go out and do a 1-hour autograph session. So we go out, and his handler has to go to the restroom or something. So we're standing at the front door of the green room, and just chatting. And I see this guy walking down the hallway, and he's got this determined look on his face. He's got a book, and I'm thinking, hey, guy, just give it a break. Go wait in line, and he'll sign your book then. But I step back, get out of the way. He comes to me with my book and says, "Can you sign this?" And he looks over at George Martin and goes, "This is a great book. Have you read it?" And I'm like, oh my, if I had more guts, I would have said, "Well, George, if you wrote a better book, maybe people would come over to you and get your book signed too." And I'm just like, how could that happen to me?
Wow.
I'm just a fanboy at heart. It's just these little it's just so hard to describe the feeling of, I make a fair amount of money writing, but it's it's the other things that matter. I'll tell you one more story. I go off on little tangents.
No, I love them.
One of my readers always had advice for me, and so I'd always listen to what he had to say. And he wanted me to send him some stuff as a beta, so I'd send it to him and listen to his advice. And he was a cook in the British Army, and he wanted to cook in one of the books. So I did, and actually became a little bit of a bigger character than I thought. And then all of a sudden, I just happened to see that he dropped off my mailing list. I was like, what happened? So I wrote him. I said, are you upset about something? I got an email about a week later from his wife, said that he had passed away. And I was just, first of all, I felt kind of guilty for wondering what was the matter. And she said he really loved my books and stuff. So I said, I'm going to dedicate my next book to him. His son sent me the transcript of the eulogy that the vicar gave at the church. It was 6 pages long. The last page was about me. I didn't realize that he had been in bed for 3 years because of his health. And he lived by reading the books and contacting me. And he told everybody about his American friend, the writer in Thailand. I was back in the States by then, but when we met, I was still working in Thailand. And I just read that, and I was just totally...
How I am right now, you guys, which you can't see, which is crying quietly.
How can I be 1/6 of this man's eulogy? When I did 20 books in London, his family drove 3 hours to come and meet me so I could give them a copy of the book that I dedicated to their father. I don't care how much money you make. It's that connection that matters more.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is really special.
That's why I write.
Yeah.
That's why I write.
I kind of want to give that a moment. Okay. And then I'm going to take this into, because you wouldn't have that moment if you hadn't been engaging with your readers.
True.
There are, and you've seen it in Facebook groups, where somebody comes in and they just like, read my book, and then they're out, and you don't there's not this engagement, and you're engaging with your readers. So if you hadn't been engaging, you never would have known that, and you never would have been that person for this gentleman. You never would have had that. So can you tell us the story of engage? How did you come to engage with your readers, and how does that and build those relationships?
Initially, it was through going to conventions. And then in 2016, by this time, I'd sold a lot of books. And another writer said, well, how many people do you have on your mailing list? I was, mailing list? Okay. So I started a mailing list. And I didn't mean it this way, but I think this helped a lot. I asked my mailing list, hey, I had just won an auction for Tuckerization in a Mike Resnick book and an Annie Belay book, where I won the auction, so they're going to put my name as a character in their books. And I didn't know I was going to win both, but it was cool. And so I thought, well, I need names. Why don't I put that out to my mailing list? I had done that with a couple of my classmates, the brother of one of my classmates who had died unexpectedly at the dentist. And I saw how people liked it and what it touched them. And so I put it out there, and I got 200, 300 people saying, put my name in a book, put my name in a book. Some were wanted to be killed gloriously, others no. And I did that. And I think a lot of these people became a lot closer to me. I have a guy who told me it's helped him. He didn't want his name, but he wanted his son's name, who had died in an accident in Korea. And then I found out that he had PTSD from Vietnam, and he was using my books to help go through that. So it's just responding to, I respond to every single email. I mean, these are the people who are paying my mortgage. You put it bluntly.
Yeah.
These are the people who I'm writing for. I owe them, if they're going to take however many hours to read one of my books out of their life, I could certainly take 5 minutes to answer an email.
Yeah.
And I believe I have, if I look at my mailing list, I bet 10% I have regular communications with. It may only be every time a new book comes out.
Yeah, but still, 10%. That's a lot.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, but like you said, each one of those people is spending at least a few hours reading your book.
And I get a lot out of it. I had my initial, my UFM, United Federation Marine Corps series was supposed to be 5 books. It grew to 8 because people were saying, well, wait a minute, you can't skip this one. And at the end, by the time I got to the end, I'm thinking, oh, am I doing the right thing? That's my plan that I had from book 1. Is this smart? And so I went to my mailing list and I said, hey, I got to ask you guys some questions. Spoiler alert. If you don't want to hear this, don't respond. But if you do, come back to me. I had 76 people want to contribute. 73 said, don't do it, what I had planned on doing.
Really?
3 said, well, if you think you have to do it, you think you must. At that point, I knew, wait a minute. I'd already had second thoughts myself. I said, okay. And I changed it. But the thing is, it didn't look like I changed it when you're reading.
It doesn't, like you can't tell like it was one arc and then it goes to a completely other arc.
You thought if you were one of those 73 people, which they told me later, they thought I had gone my initial direction. But because of that, I had more people crying at the end of that. But my brother said he'd never cried reading a book in his life. He cried. I cried writing it. I had most of these 73 people, all of them probably wrote me and goes, oh my gosh, you had me going there. And then now at the end, that was just so perfect. I cried. But it's because I listened. And some writers say, oh, it's your book. You're the artist. Do what you want to do. Hey, if you're just writing for yourself, write a diary and put it under your mattress at night. If you want people to read your books, you have to think about them.
Yeah, I love that.
And if they can make me a better writer, I would have made a mistake if I had gone with my initial plan that I had, a year and a half when I started that series.
Which series is that?
That's the UFMC series, United Federation Marine Corps.
Okay.
The first one, which starts with Recruit.
Okay. Just double checking because I know there's people who are listening to this who are gonna be like, okay, I want an amazing series where I'm gonna cry at the end. So there's people listening who are like, I'm curious about that series. Which one is it? So Jonathan Brazee, the Recruit series starts with Recruit. So
That's up.
Yeah. What advice?
But I have to say,
yes.
People say that you need 1 million words to become a good writer. Recruit was on the earlier side of my writing. I do think I'm a better writer now, but read Recruit.
Okay. You have to start someplace to get through the series, right? But it does get better. Okay. That's fair, because I actually the next question I want to ask you is, what advice would you give to other authors what's your best advice to give them?
This is going to sound trite, but write. You can't edit, as some people say, you can't edit a blank page. Just start writing. David Brin, who is a pretty well-known writer, he and I used to communicate back when email was new. And he said that every day, no matter what, whether he has anything to write or not, when he takes the kids to school and all that kind of stuff, has lunch, runs errands, he sits down at 1:00 and writes. Even if it's something he's never going to use. And that's good advice. Everyone says, well, I'm going to write that novel. Oh, it's going to be good. I'm going to write that novel. Write it. And then the best marketing for that novel is the second novel. And then the third. All those things. Every time you put out a novel, your first ones start bumping up in sales a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a key part in that. What you're saying is write, complete it, and write the second one.
True. I forget which forum it is.
Mm-hmm.
Something on social media. Someone was saying that he had 50 some odd books written. He's never published one because he's waiting until he thinks they're good or something like that.
Oh my heavens.
Just no one's ever, I guarantee, this is one guarantee that I could give you. You will get 0 sales if you don't publish.
Yeah.
That's the only guarantee.
Well, and think about all the feedback you have gotten from your readers that have made you a better writer.
Absolutely.
That you never would have gotten if you had just been putting them under the bed, or, like if you never put them out into the world. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, Wow. Okay. This is very, very lovely. I want to thank you so much for sharing your experience and your stories with me and with all of our people who are listening. So if you can tell us where people can find you and tell us about your latest book.
My latest book, I've been a little bit hesitant on it. Especially I wrote a novella because this book, let me go back.
Yeah.
I had this idea from 2016 that I talked with an editor at a publishing house. And we were working on it for 2 years. Yeah, 2016 at Dragon Con. And we were working on it for 2 years, and everything was going so slow, and it wasn't going. And I was waiting for the final word from them, and I decided to write a little novella. In the Navy, a very short woman, for reasons that are in the book, and that novella has done very, very well. People love it. I think in the first 2 weeks, I had like 66 reviews.
Wow.
And meanwhile, I parted ways with that publisher. So I already had part of that novel done. And this novel is much more of my military books tend to be discipline and loyalty and brotherhood of war, that kind of stuff. This one went into racism, asexuality, a number of issues that were deeper and didn't make the future Marines as everything was perfect. They're the best in the world. And so I was a little bit hesitant, but that book's called Integration. I published it two weeks ago about. Not as many reviews, but pretty good reviews, and people are buying it. But this was my first, if you compare it to my novella, which was just action and fun and everything hunky-dory, this one's a little bit darker. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see how it is going to go. I'm curious to see when right now I'm working on the book 2 of the novellas, the Fire Ant novellas. But when I do the second book in here, what's the reception going to be? Because this is new ground for me. I mean, it's based on the Montfort Point Marines, which were the first African-American Marines. And what they went through from 1942 to 1949, I've taken their stories, real life stories of what happened to them, and brought that into this book. How it's going to be received, I don't know. A couple people love it, but just the fact that I only have 12 reviews in 2 weeks compared to 66 or 70 for the other one, I needed to write it. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure what the reception. I mean, it's selling well, but that could quit.
Yeah, I wonder. Well, everybody, you might want to go check out Integration. And it might just be your audience has come to expect a certain specific thing. But if you could get this book in front of a different audience, slightly different audience, it might do very, very well. But
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll
see.
But
you asked where you could find me. Yep. My website is jonathanbrazee.com, and that's Brazee.
Yeah.
And Jonathan, the normal Jonathan, all one word.
And he's also on Facebook. But
that's right.
But the best way to go is to go to his website, because his website will link to the Facebook and every other social media plus his newsletter. Okay. Thank you so very, very much for taking the time to be here. We really appreciate. I think your story and stories are really, really going to inspire people who maybe haven't taken that step to put their book out there. And now
I hope so, because I want to read those books that are still out there waiting. They're in people's brains, in their minds, in their hearts. I want to read them.
I know. You sound
So write them.
I know. Agreed. I am diddling that very strongly, you guys. Okay. You guys, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate. Go ahead and check out some of the other episodes. We've got some of the people interviewed that he referenced in here. Craig Martell and some other space opera sci-fi dudes. All this buddy, this like system of guys that are helping other authors be successful.
Oh, but we do have Lindsay Baroker too.
Yeah.
So we do have all the guys and Lindsay.
Thank you so much. Hugs and happy authoring.
Welcome to the Author Like a Boss podcast, the podcast for indie authors who want to improve their writing, up-level their marketing, make money with their books, and have fun doing it. Now, onto the show with your host, Ella Barnard.